My name is Jerrid Grimm. I'm the co-founder of Pressboard. We are co-hosting this with Glacier Media today. Glacier Media and Pressboard have worked together for quite some time. And let me just get this one. And yeah, we have a couple of guests here. Now, the reason that we're doing this today is because we're really interested in the idea of community right now. There's this interesting time going on where we are separated from people in our community. I've only really seen my family for the last little while, and I think they're getting tired of me. But we're separated from each other, but we've never been more dependent on each other in a lot of ways. So if you think about it, we're relying on each other right now for our health. That's one of the reasons that we're keeping separated. We're counting on each other for taking the responsibility that we need to be able to get groceries, let's say once every couple weeks instead of once a week. But we're also needing our community from a news perspective. We're realizing how important local businesses are, where I didn't even realize how important my local coffee shop was or my grocery store. My wife has really noticed the difference in not having her spin studio that she's used to going to. I know that me and a few friends are missing the pub that's local to us. So we've seen all these importance of community. And today we're really excited to be able to talk about how there's a business in the community. We hear a lot of news that it's a bit of a downer a lot of times, but there's these really interesting stories that are coming up where there's perseverance and where businesses are growing and paying attention to their community as well. So I'd like to introduce our guests today. We have two amazing guests, Laura Larson, Director of Marketing Operations from Glacier Media Group, and Barry Hartman, co-founder at 505 Junk. Laura and I have known each other for a while. We work really closely with Glacier. Laura has been leading the sponsored content group over at Glacier Media. And if you don't know Glacier Media by name, you definitely know them by news. So I live in North Vancouver, so North Shore News is my local media. And I've realized how important that local news aspect is. We see a lot of global news, what's going on in Italy and Spain, but what's really important sometimes is what's going on in the neighborhood next to us. For me, for instance, one of the early parts of the COVID crisis was around a home that was nearby in Lynn Valley. And I got a lot of that news from the North Shore News. And it was interesting because that wouldn't be covered on a global basis, but it was being covered in my local community. So I'd like to welcome our guests and we'll get started. We're going to have a chat with Laura and Barry. We're going to learn about how Barry and 505 Junk were able to enter into the market during this time by paying attention to the community and how it moved their business forward as well as the community. So with that, Laura, I am going to pass it over to you.
Thanks so much, Jerrid. And thank you for everyone. Thank you to everyone for being with us today. We're really excited to talk about sponsored content, and we have some insights and some ideas and some success stories, including how a local business who we'll speak with turned a challenge into an opportunity. And there's a prize alert at the end of this broadcast. We're giving away a standout sponsored content package to one of today's viewers. So stay tuned for the big reveal at the end of the broadcast when the winner of the standout package will be selected. So our purpose is to talk about how COVID-19 has shown us that business trends and consumer priorities are shifting as more of us are staying at home because we have to. And with that, it's creating a new set of needs and wants. So we're seeing a lot of things. We're seeing local businesses close, for instance, and it's hard, like Army Navy closed its doors after 101 years. And if that business is vulnerable, how many others are on the brink? So on the upside, we're seeing other businesses succeed by quickly improvising and finding ways to adapt and changing strategies to meet those newly developing consumer needs and wants. And it's a trend. We're seeing changing trends in media usage habits. Community news sites are seeing more than double the traffic since the pandemic started. People want to know how the pandemic, to Jerrid's point, is affecting their local community directly. People are looking for answers and ways to adapt changes into the new normal. So we know that it takes 3 weeks to develop a new habit. So logically, we can assume that much of this community news traffic and people's media usage habits will remain in place once the isolation phase eases soon. An earlier trend of the isolation was that consumers were forced to find new ways to shop. So some of our favorite businesses were closed, and some have altered their operations. And while consumers are building new relationships with businesses, we as consumers are also more open to businesses that maybe we haven't supported before. So we're certainly more conscious of the need to support small and local businesses. How do businesses re-engage? How do businesses introduce themselves to new customers while undergoing changes to operations and strategy? The final piece in this challenge is where the opportunity lies. You will have noticed how the tone of advertising messaging has changed. It's the "we're here for you" and so on. And in marketing, we're always looking for ways to cut through the clutter. So it's quiet right now, and there's less noise, and there's less clutter. How do you stand out and elevate your business message and cut through the clutter that there is? The answer is storytelling through sponsored content. We're seeing an upward trend in light of an ever-changing market, and we're helping businesses to reach customers in new ways by positioning content where existing and potential customers are already looking. And among many other benefits, sponsored content provides credibility without being intrusive, and people respond to it because less intrusion is always welcome. So why would you add sponsored content to your media mix? It's unique in the way that it allows you to shape the narrative or embrace a whole new narrative. You can choose the timing. It allows you to really ramp up your PR efforts. We can boost traffic to an article while it's live on a media publication. It can also provide full metrics on the story. Unlike earned with paid media, you can see how many people read your story, for how long they read the story, how far they scrolled within that story, how many links they clicked, what the click-through rate on those links are, where are those people from, what kind of device are they using, brackets showing their reader age ranges. So it gives you a lot of data, and it can be written to capture Google search activity by responding to a question, which is really interesting, and I'll speak a little more about that later. Based on the metrics and the data that we collect from sponsored content, we know what kind of content performs well, what resonates with readers, and what produces higher conversion rates. And I'll share some of these tips with you later. Right now, let's get to it. So we're really happy to have Barry Hartman with us today and to offer real-world perspective on how sponsored content works for a business. And Barry's joining us as our special guest. He's a bit of a rock star. He's a professional snowboarder turned entrepreneur, and he co-founded 505 Junk Removal in 2011. It's an eco-friendly junk removal and recycling company based in Richmond. Barry and his partners have won multiple awards for their business and other entrepreneurial endeavors. And like so many other businesses, 505 Junk faced big decisions with regards to continuing operations when COVID-19 hit. So after being published in editorial news many times in the past, Barry and his partners decided to invest in a sponsored standout campaign to communicate their latest business changes with the target audience in an efficient and respectable manner through a trusted source. Barry, thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate you taking the time to have this discussion and share your insights. Why don't we start off with you explaining a little bit more about your business, how you founded it, and where it stands today. And please tell us a bit about your background too, because it lends an interesting angle to your whole approach.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me today. So I think the best place to start was if we take it back to when I was about 17 years old. I had just graduated from high school and moved straight to Whistler to become a professional snowboarder, which coming from Tsawwassen in a population of 20,000 people with a mountain within an hour drive, I would say an hour and 15 minutes is the closest mountain. It was a pretty, untraditional career path, I would say. So moved to Whistler, ended up getting quite a few sponsors as a result of just, well, I was actually a janitor from 5 p.m. till 3 a.m. And then we'd wake up at 6 a.m. and go snowboarding every single day. And I was young enough where, you know, sleep wasn't a big priority at the time. So did that for about 3 years. We did a lot of traveling down to Argentina and Chile. We had a pretty fun sponsorship with Coors Light that had, at the time, an unlimited supply of beer for friends and family. So that was nice. And, you know, I would always come back to my hometown, Tsawwassen, for Christmas, and was playing soccer with some friends, broke my ankle. Sure enough, you know, the sponsors probably aren't too fond of someone that can't snowboard with, you know, having the broken ankle, and all of a sudden I was chopped liver. So it was interesting in a sense that, you know, snowboarding was my life. It was my passion. It was everything that I dreamed of when I was a kid, even dating back to high school. You know, my career and personal planning projects were around a professional snowboarder. And all of a sudden you have your whole life just kind of flash before your eyes. And it was honestly the biggest opportunity in hindsight, because I was studying marketing management at Kwantlen University at the time. And what I realized is that I was kind of over snowboarding from a sponsorship standpoint. I really loved it as a sport, but I wasn't really doing it for myself anymore. And that's when when my business partner and I, who I was going to college with, we launched 505 Junk from my parents' basement in Tsawwassen.
Excellent.
So, yeah, I guess just a little bit about 505 Junk. Essentially, we started just the two of us. Our first employee, actually, Alex Elsie at the time, joined us for the ride pretty early on, and I think he saw the potential in what we were building. And he's actually developed into a partner and general manager of the company today. And one of the cool things was that it was a very grassroots startup. So we built our story from ground one, and we actually had a story in the Delta Optimist probably no more than 6 months in. And what I realized from the snowboarding days is the value of sharing experiences and sharing your, you know, I wasn't really big into competition. We were more into the media and the videos and the, you know, photography and sponsorship, product placement. So that helped us, you know, gain traction really quick with 505 Junk. And where we are today is about 6 trucks in the Lower Mainland, just under 25 staff. And we were cooking with gas, and then all of a sudden, you know, COVID-19 came in, and that's when we had to make some pivots that I'm sure we'll be talking about.
So it's interesting. I see a parallel between how life threw you a bit of a curve when you were a snowboarder. You had this path in front of you, and then you had to change directions. And do you think that having that context gave you insight? And in light of the outbreak, what were the challenges that your business faced?
Yeah, it was interesting. We're a value-based company. And so basically what that means is we have a very defined set of principles that conduct all of our business decisions. And one of them really is around our people. And, you know, we look at safety and making, you know, conscious decisions around what's right, upholding integrity. And there is this gray zone where we were like, should we operate? Should we not operate? This is maybe the first week of March where, you know, the first few cases were coming through British Columbia. Other countries were heavily impacted. So, you knew the potential of this virus. And one of our employees, he was living with his girlfriend, and she was a nurse. And one of the several hundred beds, someone came in with the coronavirus. And so no one, you know, in our company or anything like that, you know, came close to it. But as a precautionary, you know, policy, we rewrote it and said, okay, we're going to shut our doors for a couple of weeks, and everyone's going to self-quarantine. And a week after we made that decision, the provincial government came out and said, we need everyone staying home. Mm-hmm. And 5 days after that, they sent waste management as an essential service. And so we're just getting thrown all over the place, trying to figure out what's right, what's wrong. And we essentially landed on, after we came out of our quarantine, everyone was safe, we had a group of people that wanted to continue to operate. Some of our employees wanted to go on employment insurance, and which we completely supported, both sides. We rewrote our processes, one person to a truck instead of two, which means 2 trucks to every job site instead of 1. Significant upgrades, you know, on the communication side with our website, making sure people were aware that we are operating, but under very adjusted kind of protocols and measures. And the next step was to get the word out, because the demand naturally dropped quite a bit.
Right. So you made the necessary operational changes to the structure of your business and how you would operate. And then you had to make some business strategy decisions. And how did you address those challenges?
So one of the ways that we saw, so we were about 70% commercial, and a lot of the tenant improvement projects, which is really a construction term for commercial renovations, were restaurants, retail, and office spaces. Those were our top 3 kind of commercial construction companies that we would work with the project managers. And so naturally, those just completely fell off. We maintained, you know, fairly steady levels throughout March and April just because of the contracts, but we thought about it like, how can we get back into our roots, which is the residential market, and specifically in Delta, which is where Scott and I had started the business in my parents' basement in Tawasin. And yeah, so we had some, you know, we had some stories with the Delta Optimist. I was previously on the board with the Delta Chamber of Commerce. We were fortunate to win some awards. Alex, our general manager, who I was speaking of, actually won Employee of the Year last year with Delta Chamber of Commerce. He also coordinates a lot of the shoreline cleanups.
Okay.
And so we've always had good momentum in Delta, but there wasn't a lot for us to talk about. It was kind of dark days. Like, it's, you know, COVID-19 it just came through. Like, we can't really talk about the successes of the company, just because I don't think it would have, you know, came off right.
Well,
so we were
kind of tone deaf to the market.
Yeah.
I think you've shown that you're great community members, and so you went back to the community.
Exactly. And so we looked at it and said, what kind of message can we do? Well, it was really about, you know, giving back to the community. And we're a small business, so as much as we'd love to, we're not able to just, you know, cut a big check to, you know, local not-for-profits. It would have just drained us. So what we decided on is, let's remove our pickup fee, because we have a pickup fee and we charge by weight for our junk removal service. And let's remove our minimum charge, which came with a lot of risk, mainly because someone could put a piece of paper outside and come pick this up for 29 cents, which doesn't really work that well. The other thing was the Delta cleanup organized by the city of Delta was canceled. And so all these people were anticipating this cleanup, and all of a sudden it was just removed from their, you know, ability to get the stuff picked up for free. Now, we're not a free service, but we could offer a heavily discounted option where we thought, you know, if we could just break even on a sponsored content campaign with the Optimist, that would be great, because at least we got our story out there. And break even for us was, you know, booking maybe 10 to 15 jobs, you know, however big the job was.
You got your 10 to 15.
We got our 10 to 15. Yeah, we've acquired, you know, a client acquisition cost from a marketing term, or, you know, if you're a client, it's, you know, we've built relationships with over 230 people now. And it started off with the newspaper, and then we went digital. And then there's very niche Facebook groups and local communities where if you have your brand ambassadors, it says a lot more than an owner or an employee going in and say, hey, use our service, support local, versus someone that is a client and taking this link from a local newspaper and placing it into that group online and going, hey, you should really check out this company. And that really just helped drive the awareness of what we were doing, but also online shares and comments and likes. And then we go and do the job, and the neighbors see the trucks, and the trucks are driving in the streets every single day, and people are talking about it. And so we just kept going with it. We've been doing it for over 6 weeks now.
Fantastic. And so those 230 new clients that you connected with from your article, so you ran a bolded call to action in the story, and people connected to that. They got in touch with you because you tapped into their needs and wants, and there was a community message in there. You're a member of the community. And so now you have 230 new customers. And what kind of, how did that change your financial picture during COVID?
So we were growing like a weed up until we had to completely halt our operations. And it was mainly because commercial. We were really building a relationship with the commercial side. Then it really dropped off. Well, it literally dropped off. Like, basically we shut our doors, and people were knocking on the doors, but we're like, sorry, we don't have drivers. We can't help you right now. Call us in 2 weeks, or, here's a competitor. And so then we really had to kind of figure out how to uptick. And this campaign, we've invested about $1,500. Well, I would say $2,000 now has returned about $40,000 in direct revenue. But we also track a promo code, which, despite the lead source, maybe it originally wasn't from the campaign. When we apply that promo code in our tracking in our CRM software, it tracks the overall revenue for referrals, neighbors. Oh, I saw your truck in the area, and then I read your ad, and it has that. They say it takes 21 touch points to make a purchasing decision. I don't know if that's still relevant or not. That was a 2009 college quote, but there's definitely some relevance around having multiple, Facebook groups and the newspaper and your service or your storefront if you're a coffee shop, and just getting, more touch points out there.
Completely. So you have an integrated campaign effectively with word of mouth referral and with the way that you're magnifying that message on social media, et cetera.
Exactly.
And then you track the lifetime value of those customers as well.
And that's the other thing, is we do a lot of email marketing. Well, not a lot. We do one per month, high value, once a month. And we're just 6 weeks in, and it's already delivered. I'd have to pull up my calculator for this one, but it's probably an interesting number. We're, say, 40,000 into 1,500 is about a 26 times return. But we're 6 weeks in. Usually clients rebook at a 20% rate per year. And so now we have I look at it like 240 new relationships, 240 new opportunities to leave Yelp reviews. And so it'll be interesting to see where, we are a year from now with this campaign.
That's fantastic. Barry, thank you for sharing this, because it's one thing for an agency to share case studies, but when it's you and it's your business and it's the impact that it's had on your business, it means so much more to hear it from you.
Yeah, and I think people have a hard time trusting, when you're selling something. And I'm here sharing my story just, because I want people to understand how and why sponsored campaigns or sponsored content works, so that they can apply it to their own business. And, we originally thought, let's approach it let's approach the local newspaper, the Delta Optimist, from an editorial standpoint. Mm-hmm. And, I talked to Matt Blair about it, and we both kind of discussed it, and he's the publisher at the Optimist, and we both realized that this isn't really a story. We're providing like a heavily discounted service to give back to the community, but it's not really like a front page cover story. So it was an investment and it was an advertisement, but it was positioned in a way that it was something to read. We did half a page. Maybe I'm biased. I thought we had a bit of a cool story to share. And we've received a lot of good feedback around it. So It was, yeah, that was a, kind of the approach that we wanted to take. But yeah, from an advertising or from an agency standpoint, it would be tough to sell this idea until you actually take something and, give them a real life example.
I think one of the misconceptions about sponsored content is the value piece, and good content is good content, and you had a good story and it resonated with people.
I think one of the areas that people maybe get thrown off with the word advertising is the cost, because there's the quote, 50% of your advertising works. Well, which one? Let's put money into that one. This one works, so we're going to keep putting money into it. For me, and I think it's important to remember this, when you're communicating in something like your local newspaper that has mass reach, especially during, during COVID-19, because generally speaking, people are, well, we're at home and we're getting this newspaper delivered to us. Let's see what's going on. It's almost like we actually cut our AdWords budget in half and invested in local newspapers, which a lot of people, without thinking about it, would say, are you sure that's a good idea? Everything's digital these days. Well, it is digital. And we did the local newspaper. We also did the digital, and then we shared it on social media. And then you can even pay Facebook to, and it just keeps going. So it starts with that story, though, is the key.
So what points in a business strategy do you think companies should look at integrating sponsored into their media mix?
I think that's a great question. I think for a lot of companies, it starts with why, and understanding your core purpose. There's a good book by Simon Sinek that literally is called Start With Why. And that is really the fundamental nature of what a good story comes from. And, our why at 505 Junk, and everyone's different. Scott, my business partner, his core purpose is to do the right thing. So really hold the buckle down on integrity. Mine was opportunity. I came from a broken ankle with no money, living in my parents' basement, studying at college, and I just wanted to do something special, and really wasn't anything lying in front of me at the time, so we had to create it. So those are our two kind of drivers. And when we look at this campaign, we're like, okay, let's do the right thing. Let's remove the pickup fee. Let's remove the minimum charge. Let's make our service completely accessible to anyone. And let's also provide our staff an opportunity to keep working, to be socially distant because everything's curbside. And for the company to continue to thrive in an environment that really isn't, conducive of that. So anyone though, a coffee shop, for example, what's your story? Why did you decide to invest in this lease and redesign this storefront into a place that sells coffee? What's your motivator? Was it you wanted to bring people together? Was it that you really loved coffee and you wanted to put out the best coffee ever? So if you're putting out the best coffee ever, where does it come from? Which companies are you supporting? How are you socially responsible? And then you can take that story and then share it. But going to the market and saying, come buy my coffee, like I'm a capitalist and I really want to drive my profit on the bottom line, nobody's buying that.
It doesn't resonate. Barry, great marketing, brilliant tactics, and thank you for sharing them with us. And I'm wondering if you have any kind of final thoughts on sponsored content that you would say directly to another business.
I would say give it a shot. And like anything, it does take, we were a bit fortunate in the sense that off the first campaign, we hit a home run on it, but we were expecting 5 jobs. So if I booked 2, I would have tried it all over again. If we booked 10, I would have thought it was a success, right? The reason why it's important to invest in sponsored content is because it allows you to share your story while actually delivering some ROI, if not pretty significant ROI. But the purpose of it is not necessarily to drive revenues, to share your story. So come up with your story first and then put aside a certain amount in your marketing budget to make sure you can invest in it with your local newspapers.
Thank you.
And Laura, I'm going to jump in here with a couple of polls. We've got some polls set up. We've got a lot of people on here. I'm going to do one poll. So everyone, all you attendees, you're going to be able to see this come up on your screen. Since Barry's been so helpful sharing his story, let's find out some information for him. So I have a question I'm going to share here. If you've ever used a junk removal service in the last 3 years, so I'm going to launch that poll right now. You can answer it, and then I will share the results. This is like your market research here, Barry. All right, we've got a lot of votes coming in really quick.
Thank you. I'm very curious, actually.
No. Okay, well, okay, let's see if you can guess. What percentage do you think have used a junk removal service in the last 3 years? And then I'll share the results. I'm going to end this poll.
45%.
The answer is 31%.
31.
There's no prize.
Not bad.
But 31% of people have used, so lots of room for opportunity there. That's one poll. And I'm going to do another one. I'm going to ask our attendees where they get their news updates from. This is something that is dear to my heart. I'm a news junkie. And Laura works directly within a news organization at Glacier Media. So I'm going to ask everybody where they look for their news updates most frequently. And there's some choices here. So choose between radio and podcast, Google searches, online news reports, television news reports, social media, or other. All right, we have some great ones coming in here as well. So this is your most common place or first place that you look for these. And then I will provide the results. 5 seconds. Great, a couple more votes coming in. Great voting, everyone. It looks like we have almost everyone that's in attendance voting. So here's the results from that. Online news reports. I think this is really interesting right now, and we'll jump into this, Laura, but around this COVID timing, I've been consuming more news than ever before. And it's really interesting where you're getting your news from. This idea of trusted news sources has been around for a while, but it seems to come most into play when there's something that affects us personally, either health related or related. So I'm going to stop sharing the results there, but online news reports came in with 55% of the audience, social media coming in at second with 25% there. So that's a couple of polls. We'll do a couple of polls as we continue. And Laura, I will pass it back to you.
Okay, thanks so much. So we've talked a bit about how sponsored content was able to affect a change for Barry's business. And there are a few different kinds of sponsored content. We tend to think about it as the editorial narrative style, but I'm going to talk a little bit about what kind of objectives you can address with sponsored content, what kind of appeals you can use, and what the different types of sponsored content are. Before I jump into a quick presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about what kind of content might not be successful. And it's brief. It's when your content reads like advertorial, it reads like an ad. Maybe the headline is something that doesn't appeal, people don't look at it. So it's kind of brand bragging. It tends to deliver lower reads because it doesn't offer the value. Can I say it's boring? It's low value, and people want to read content that has value for them, period. And as Barry's example has shown, good sponsored content is good content. So now I'm just going to share my screen for a moment and pull up a presentation. Where's Chrome?
I love your background, by the way, Laura. That's a lot more interesting than my Windows logo.
It's very creative. I'm just trying to maximize my window here.
While you're getting that set up, Laura, I have another poll, like the pollster here. I have just a fun one for everyone. Curious around on average, how many days of the week people are ordering food from a restaurant. So I know my house has gone into ordering a lot more food. So if you can answer this question, 1 to 2 days per week, 3 to 5 days per week, 5 to 7 days per week, or hardly ever I cook. No judgment on your answers here. These are anonymous polls. But I know the food delivery has become a really big thing, and I will share the results in a second. And the results are in. So most people are usually 1 to 2 days per week. I'm curious if this is going to increase as we, start making less sourdough bread at home and banana bread. We're out of bananas ourselves. You know how you have a freezer full of brown bananas? We've finally finished through that portion of it. So no more banana bread at the Grimm household. So it'll be interesting to poll again in a little while and see how that has changed.
So I'm having some technical difficulties here, which is unfortunate.
Why don't we jump into a couple questions that I have from the audience. Barry, I have a question that's come in for you, and I'm curious about this as well. So one question that we have, I'm a business owner, you're a business owner. It's not an easy time for a lot of business owners, regardless of whether your business is directly affected or if it's an opportunity for your business. I'm curious what planning, what has changed with how you plan for the future? I don't think anyone could have predicted this. I doubt any of your cash flow analysis said, what if everyone doesn't leave their house for, a period of months? Has it changed at all the way that you're planning out the future of your business?
Yeah, I think the amount of financial retrends that we've done in the last 30 days is probably around 30. But no, the reality is our company goes really heavy on planning. So quarterly strategic planning, annual strategic planning. We do annual retreats with our management team, marketing plans, KPIs, you name it. And the point is to invest in that in December so that we really have a good foundation for the year. And holy smokes, in the middle of March, that plan was just thrown out the window, and it's day by day. I think we're week by week now. I would love to get back into monthly planning, but it went from, I would say the middle of March was like, you plan an hour out to plan the next day to now we're kind of planning a week out, doing like weekly goal setting meetings with our team. And I keep telling myself that the quarterly planning is around the corner, but we'll see.
Yeah. I agree. I don't think that quarterly planning is a thing anymore. And annual planning, imagine what next March looks like right now is quite difficult. And I think that's like an important discussion that a lot of businesses are having now. There's a lot of intimacy around business. And we're inside of each other's houses right now, basically. People are calling in from bedrooms and kitchens, and I'm in my basement. Laura's calling in. Laura has a nicer background but I believe it's a Zoom background. So there's this interesting thing where I think businesses are willing to share more information. And one of the parts of it is just learning from what's going on, because this is a unplanned, unpredictable scenario. And even as we move forward, what the next 3 to 6 months look like. Laura?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just reloading here. I'll just be one more moment. I had my Chrome basically crashed, so I just have to pull up a couple of links. I'll be one more moment.
Sounds good. We've got a couple more questions. We actually have a pile of questions, so we're going to do some of the Q&A right now as well. There's some questions around advertising. And Barry, I know that you spoke a little bit about the different advertising ways that you've gone into market using newspapers, and the trucks themselves are a great representation of the brand. How has the word of mouth, so you do this initiative, you drop some of your fees, you reduce the minimums, which I imagine you could lose money on each you could sign new customers and lose money on each customer if they don't have enough there to pay for the gas and the people that are in that truck. So what have been the effects from a brand perspective for 505 Junk? What do you think people's perception, has it changed at all once you went into market with this kind of discounted offering or part of the community?
That's a great question. I'm a very intuitive thinker, I think. And so while we could probably, say selecting Delta as a community, do, brand polls or, call a client, we track the number of referrals. So we have a clear idea for that. But actually, my fiance and I moved to Tsawwassen back home about a month ago. And I like doing little tests when I'm kind of walking around, and we were walking by one of our neighbors the other day, and I sometimes ask questions about 505 Junk to get a gauge if they've used the service or if they have, what their perspective. And, we've had a great reputation online with Yelp and Google and Facebook and these review sites, but I'm definitely starting to feel like the brand is being developed in Delta, more than just the usage or more than just the client base. People are starting to see the trucks on a daily basis, and I think that's the goal. And there's many more markets we need to do this in, but I think that's the goal, is when people hear the word junk removal, they rifle off 505 Junk rather than our friendly neighbors next door, who are the largest junk removal company on the planet.
I think that would be a funny conversation where someone's just trying to have a normal conversation with you and you continually are bringing up junk removal questions.
Yeah, it was funny with one of the neighbors. I have the trucks here quite a bit these days for the renovations, but I was loading loading material into the truck with Jen. It's just good exercise, and the neighbor walked by and started to ask questions about 505 Junk and said they had used the service, and they're like, "So do you live here or do you work for the company?" And I was like, "Well, both. I'm in the neighborhood. Nice to meet you." But
I have a quick question here. Is there meaning to 505 in the business name? My assumption is it's a phone number, but we did have a question that came in, so I'm going to quickly, that's a quick answer one before we get back to Laura.
Yeah, very, very quick answer here. Basically, the long story short is we had about 70 names we were picking through, and none of them were that appealing. I'm not sure if we weren't creative enough or what it was, but we bought the phone number 604-505-5865 from Rogers for $20, and people just started rifling off, when is 505 Junk going to be ready? When's 505 ready? And it started rolling off the tongue like 911. And so we just went with it, 505 Junk. It was the phone number. We got the website, and we bought the 800 number.
That's great. All right, Laura.
Okay, so thank you for bearing with me here. I've got I've reloaded Chrome, and okay, here we go. So, types of sponsored content. So, when we talk about objectives, back over here. Time-driven objective. So Barry's story of going to the market with something that was timely, it resonated because it had a quick window, it addressed people's needs, and it was in the moment. When you meet current consumer demands and their needs in a particular community, it's a good example of a time-driven objective. So, storytelling, and really what this is an awareness objective. So bear with me for a moment while I go through the marketing funnel. And it's an inverted triangle, and at the top layer here you have awareness, and in the middle layer you have engagement and consideration, and the little triangle at the bottom of the inverted triangle is where the magic happens, and that's conversion. So here's the triangle. And so any awareness objective starts right up here. And the goal of that campaign is to move people down. So this campaign, storytelling to address an awareness objective, we had a franchise business who had a story that they needed to tell. And Live Well is a prescribed exercise clinic, and they specialize in supervised exercise and healthy lifestyle coaching. Their business needed to build awareness with their target audience. And the way that their business operates is they start with a thorough functional and cardiorespiratory assessment with their clients, and then a customized exercise program tailored to the customer health needs and goals. And this audience is people that they need to make changes to their health. And so they're not going to go to a spin class or to a gym with orange lights, or it's too intimidating. It doesn't meet their needs. So this is needs, wants on behalf of the consumer. So this campaign, we had the one story, the one franchise operator. We had kind of a control group for the data because there was a landing page, and the only traffic that was going to that landing page was from the sponsored content article. So people read it, they were up here in awareness, and then they clicked to the landing page. Now they're in engagement and consideration. So when you get to that landing page, here's the pricing. Here's everything that you need to know to move towards conversion. And the conversion was a lead gen form on the other side of that page. The reason it goes to a landing page is if you send someone to a website, they might get distracted and they might start reading other things. But this keeps the user very focused. They've gone through storytelling to purchase consideration. And the end goal of that, so this story had 2,800 reads, 25 conversions, and what those conversions looked like was 25 people committed to $200 a month for a 12-month commitment, so it drove $60,000 in sales. So the franchise owner started to run other stories, and then other franchises said, this is exactly what we need. It addressed awareness and then also touched on multiple other objectives. It drove sales, and it met consumer needs and wants. So sales. So this concept was purely about sales, and then there's a time-driven objective sort of hidden within. But when you look at this story, it doesn't feel like sales. It feels like a lifestyle piece, and it was written from the perspective of through a local lens of all the things to do in Whistler. Here's the restaurants, here's the tips, here's the things to do, and then in the bottom paragraph of the story, in the close, there was a link to a 96-hour sale. So a 4-day window. Here's discounts on Whistler. You've read all about it. You're fully engaged. So there's storytelling. You go all the way through, and then there's conversion right in the story. And I don't know what the sales were on this. It lives with the client, but we know that they had over 7,000 reads in 3 days. So it's a pretty good result. This is interesting too, because this is also an awareness objective, but it's delivered in the form of a how-to. And when you share tips and how-tos, one of the things that you're doing is you're working with Google, because consider how people search for things. A lot of people will use the Google search bar with, how do I find this? Where do I find that? And so they'll type a question directly into their search bar. And this story, the headline is how to cook the perfect steak. So it's an answer to someone's question. And we've seen 24,000 reads on this story to date. The story, this is actually sponsored content, and a restaurant in Victoria, the restaurateur is positioned as a thought leader, and he advises people how to cook the perfect steak at home. This is a photograph of their steak, and it's very appealing. And viewers will spend an average of 4 minutes with this article because it meets their needs, wants, and it answers their question. And so the interesting thing about addressing awareness through a how-to is that it's also good for your SEO, because this story ran on the Victoria Times Colonist, which is, it has high-ranking domain authority with Google as a media property. It's very well established. It has a very deep number of links on the site. So when you're driving that kind of traffic to a business from a high domain authority, it's good for your organic search rank. And one of the things that you can do to kind of close the loop on that and make it good for your own website's organic search is to link back. So you wouldn't copy the blog verbatim and have it on your site, because that would be kind of a duplicate content issue. But what you could do is say, hey, did you know that we were featured on the Victoria Times Colonist, and have the link back to where the story resides on their news site. And then now you have reciprocal linking going on, which Google identifies as good behavior and assigns better rank to it. On the Glacier Media digital side, what we would do would be to sort of facilitate that link. And one thing that you would do would be to make sure that when someone clicks that link, that it opens up in a new window right next to the window that you're browsing in, so that you don't lose the traffic off your site as well. So a few more examples. Now I'm going to talk about examples of sponsored content, different things you can do, and some kind of out of the box stuff too, because when we think about sponsored content, we should also consider what the possibilities are and other ways to delve into this space. So here's an editorial narrative style. This is the most common one that we see, and so it's local stories for the local audience. It looks very much like an earned media story. It's human interest, and it's about your brand or your service or your product. In this case, this story was for a trades training program, Electrical Joint Training Committee, and what they're trying to achieve is to attract more women into the trades. And so it clicked through to a quiz on the client site. People learned about it. I'm interested, and now we can consider this the awareness piece. And when they click through to this quiz, now they're in consideration. And this quiz was really fun. It takes you through a few quick links. You make some selections based on, I like indoors, I like outdoors, I like indoors and outdoors. Here's the activities that I like to do. Here's the kind of house that I would see myself living in. Here's some activities that I would like to do. And then based on your responses, it serves up a result that says you should pursue a career as a control electrician, or it gave a bunch of different results based on how people answered different facets of careers within the electrician trade. And an interesting outcome of this was that people read this story, they took this quiz, and then they called up the client and they said, I need to register for a career as a control electrician because that's the electrician that I should be. Like it had such good impact with viewers that they were ready to just pursue the result of the quiz, which was kind of fascinating. This is interview style. So it reads just like an interview, but it's actually sponsored content. And in this story here, the interview was with the managing director of Lyft Canada, and it was prior to car sharing being opened up in the province. And they did a lot of advertising in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland to establish market share before it was fully opened up. And in this case, it was presented in interview style. It positions you as a thought leader. It gives you the chance to communicate your brand values and increase your profile. And they talked about, here's what our organization, here's our foundations, here's what we believe. Quiz. So we saw that a quiz previously as a middle of the funnel piece. A quiz can also be a piece of content itself that it can be embedded into a story, and it increases engagement. So based on the way that people respond to that and the data that you collect from that, you can use that for persona-based marketing and further content, like for instance, email segmentation. Microsites. Now we're kind of getting into using interactive in sponsored content. And again, this work is embeddable within an article. So you can have a story and then you can have this embedded piece. I have two examples here. One of them is a map that we built to show COVID rates of infection and recovery across Canada. It was all clickable, and then based on how you clicked, you got different results. And these examples have been used for editorial, but this is the kind of thing that you could also do to drive your business. And so this this t-shirt map. Vancouver is awesome, sells t-shirts. And when you click on a t-shirt, it opens up a story, and then you can click directly to buy the t-shirt. Listicles. It's a really engaging piece of content. It's kind of bite-sized content. It's snackable content. And so it's a way for people to, it's light and it's entertaining. So people do engage with it. It has high engagement medium. And you can run share of voice campaigns through listicle content. Over to the right here, we have an interactive listicle. This is also a form of sponsored content. Interactive. This interactive piece is formatted as a timeline, but every time you click on something in the timeline, it opens up a window with more information. And so it's a good way to relay things like chronological experiences, or to recognize milestones, or for special occasions. So if it's your business's anniversary or something, that's, there's a deeper story to tell. Infographics. When you have a lot of data points and there are a lot of pieces, you can put that into a format that helps the user to build context between those different pieces of data. So within the sponsored content universe, there are all kinds of possibilities and ways to address the sales objective, the needs and wants, the awareness objective, and the time-driven objective. Oops, not yet. Jerrid, I'm going to hand it over to you for a moment.
I love it. I love that you gave that little sneak preview to the prize part. That's perfect. I got into content because, well, a couple of reasons, but I love marketing, and I just feel like content is a really interesting way to tell a story. So it's interesting to have a case study from Barry and 505 Junk, but then also to see all of the different iterations of what it can look like. So I'm going to do a quick poll here on what format of sponsored content do people find most effective. They're named slightly differently than they are in your deck there, but I think they're the common ways. So I'm going to launch a quick poll here. And what format do you find the most effective? So influencer social posts, quizzes like BuzzFeed or like the ones that Laura shared, articles which are in listicle form, articles in long form, videos, or interactive infographic microsite. So I have that poll out there now. If everyone can put in their answers, I'll end this poll in a few seconds and share the results. Oh, it looks like it's fairly evenly spread. 2 more seconds and I'll end that poll and share the results. So interactive and infographic came in with the highest amount, but you can see that it's fairly well spread across all the different types of content. I imagine interactive infographic, there's a little bit more to it, a little bit more visual. They do take longer to create, but they can be quite powerful there as well. So thanks to everyone for answering all of the polls so far. I'm going to just touch on, you can leave your screen there, Laura. No, that's fine. I'm not going to share I won't need to share my screen here. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the trends that we're seeing just for a couple minutes. So at Pressboard, we're a very data heavy company. Our software is used by hundreds, if not thousands of publishers and advertisers. And what that does is lets us see this, global or North American view of what's going on with branded content, what's going on Facebook, et cetera. And the main thing that we're seeing right now is that there's been this really big increase in supply. And by supply, I mean, there's a lot of people on Instagram, there's a lot of people on Facebook, there's a ton of people, as we know, reading news articles. And so the inventory that's available out there is higher than it has been in the past. We're all sitting at home, there's only so many things to do. I know my internet bill or my internet data usage is through the roof. Fortunately, TELUS is waiving all the overage fees. I don't know what's gonna happen when they don't do that, because we are through the roof in our house as far as data usage goes. But there's all this really high level of consumption happening. But on the other end of that, advertiser demand has declined. And there's reasons for this. There's a lot of businesses that have had to close and they can't afford to advertise right now. There are businesses that had messaging that is a bit tone deaf, and so they're pausing for a while until they come back into the market. But with those two forces, you have an increase in supply or in inventory, and you have a decrease in demand. And anyone that took economics at any point in school knows that what's going to happen is you're going to have some downward pressure on pricing. And so what we've seen is, if you take a look at Facebook, Facebook in Canada is around about 40%. The cost to advertise on Facebook is down about 40% compared to the same time last year. We're seeing native ad units come down in costs, and we're also seeing branded content. The content itself is getting a lot more views. So if you look at the effective cost per view, it's effectively cheaper than it was a few months ago. So there's this opportunity that exists, and I think Barry spoke to it really well as well, is that there are these opportunities that exist right now. You have to find them. You have to make sure that you have the right messaging in place. But the advertising world is on sale right now, is one way to look at it. Now, I know this isn't going to work for every business. If your business can't take on new customers right now, or you have to worry about cash flow, then that's obviously a consideration. But what we're seeing in the data is that there's a lot of inventory, there's a lot of attention, and overall, we've seen a decrease in rates, which provides an opportunity for those that are wanting to get into the market at this time. That's what I wanted to touch on from a data side of it. Laura, I know that we have a prize giveaway, so I'm going to pass it back to you if you want to. Are you going to do the prize draw right on the spot?
I will.
Nice.
So, oh, okay. So I lost my presentation, but I pulled the name right before. So we've got Ken Greenaway from Forerunners North Shore is the winner of the sponsored content package today.
Nice.
Yay, Ken! Yay, Forerunners.
Everybody clap in their basement. That's perfect. I wanted to, we're right at the end of time. We're actually right on time. So I wanted to thank you, Laura, and thank Barry for coming on here, Barry sharing your story. It's not often that people get to hear what's going on inside of a business and be able to hear so specifically the changes that it's made, you know, sharing business numbers. This is stuff that people often keep quite guarded. So I hope that the audience understands like what a rare occasion it is for a business owner to share financial information and challenges and opportunities that they've had. So Barry, I think from us at Pressboard, I want to thank you for sharing that story, and Laura for sharing all of the information and education around sponsored content as well. Is there anything else that you would, I want to leave it open for you to share anything else there, any thoughts that you have closing before we end this off?
No, I would also just really like to thank you, Barry and Jerrid, and for everybody that tuned in today.